Well, good evening, good afternoon in some cases, and good morning from wherever in the world you're joining us for this fireside first panel of Enable AI 2021. Hashtag is Enable AI DC. You can join us live. Obviously, you are on cyberexchange.ca. You can post your comments in the chat. You can go to the Enable AI group and share some of your pictures, but you can also follow us along on Twitter and on Instagram. Don't forget that hashtag Enable AI DC. For the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be talking to three individuals who are not only important to Durham College and our success, but important to me as an individual. These are three individuals, well, two of them specifically, and one who's still working with us, that when they told me that they were hired in industry, it took me a day or two to let that sink in because I truly, truly miss them. And it's an honor to have them here to join me on this panel as we reflect on our journeys through Durham College over the last 2 years. All of you know me. My name is Ali Hirji, and I have the pleasure and I'm humbled to be the moderator for this session. You know, they say coming together is a beginning, keeping it together is progress, working together is success. And the three individuals involved in this panel today helped us come together in the beginning, also enabled us to keep it together when we were struggling with our projects, and then got us working together and got us on this journey of success. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves in a very special little way. Taylor, I'm going to start off with you. Taylor, always good to see you live from Ottawa. Taylor, tell us a little bit about when you joined Durham College and when was your first job at the AI Hub? Taylor?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Taylor Richardson. I was a student at DC from 2018 to 2019, and I'm currently a principal investigator at the AI Hub. I've also accepted a position as a senior product manager at Health Expresso, a new exciting company. My first project at the AI Hub was actually pretty shortly after I joined, or after I started school in 2018. I think just about in October was my first one.
Absolutely. And in speaking to some of our faculty members at Durham College, one of the things that they'll tell you about Taylor is that Taylor is 99% about attitude. He comes with a can-do attitude to the table. When he began working in AI, not only did he step into it for the first time, many of us stepped into it for the first time as well. But it was the can-do attitude that, by virtue of social osmosis, spread like wildfire across our team. And today, Taylor is not only a principal investigator, he has inspired at least another 3 to 4 other students who will likely also follow in his footsteps and continue to do research at Durham College. Taylor, my man, it's always good to see you, and I'm looking forward to this chat and probably even getting you to model your tattoos, which once this pandemic is over, I will be getting. Speaking of tattoos and speaking of my fun side, I'm now going to ask an individual to introduce herself who will probably disagree that I am any fun at all. I will actually take the liberty of telling you who she is and then have her say a few comments. She is actually my first hire at the AI Hub, and I still remember she emailed me on a weekend. I responded within 5 minutes. She thought I was an absolute moron for messaging on a weekend and responding that quickly. But later on, she came to realize that that level of customer service is what got us our first level of projects at the AI Hub. She's not only a very dear friend to me, a student, but more importantly than that, she's someone who continues to remain in touch with the AI Hub, both on social media and by checking on all of us on WhatsApp, so on and so forth. Sonakshi, welcome. Thank you for accepting my offer to join this panel. Tell us a little bit about when you joined Durham College. What was your first opportunity at the AI Hub? And more importantly, where are you working right now? Sonakshi?
Yeah. So I am Sonakshi Karkera, and I graduated from the Artificial Intelligence course last summer. And I was also from one of the first batches of data analytics. And I am currently working as a Python developer at a legal tech firm called Notice Connect. And my company basically provides platform as a service for lawyers and law firms. And right now I am currently working on a cloud-based will registry platform that are used by lawyers for estate management and planning. And if I talk about my journey at the hub, I remember I feel that my path was laid out pretty well because I gained a lot of knowledge and exposure early on. Because when I started working at the hub, I'd also just started my school, and I was in my first semester of data analytics, and that's when my professor, tried to introduce me and spoke briefly of how I could be involved at the hub and could be involved in the projects. But because at that point AI was pretty new, so most of the projects at that point was in queue for approval, and I was in a hunt for an on-campus employment, and that's when I came across an hub coordinator position, and I applied for it and I got selected. But I think that was a great breakthrough because I gained a lot of exposure just working as an AI hub coordinator, because I got involved in several client meetings, and I understood what are the different problems that the industries are trying to solve. So from there on, I then switched on to research assistant and research associate. Yeah.
Sonakshi, and not only that, you were somebody who embodied the idea and the power of just showing up. For those of you who are watching, one of the things that we do at Durham College is that we give our students the opportunity to get adjusted to work life on campus, but also here in Canada. I think when she started off at the AI App, Sonakshi was about a 1 year, no, 1 month old in Canada. So getting used to that environment, getting used to our culture. And one of the things that she did very well was not only show up, but make sure that she was caring for those around us. All of us remember Sonakshi because she would come into the hub, she would see me pulling my hair or trying to braid my beard, and she would come to me and say, "Do you want some chai?" And I can tell you that I've had lots of tea on Sonakshi's dime. She's an absolute gem of a person and someone whose energy has radiated a great deal through the hub. I cannot wait when we're back in person to see you again. So Sonakshi, as always, thank you for joining. Last but not the least, someone who has been not just someone that I go to for a lot of advice, someone that I look up to tremendously because she doesn't just lead from the front. She leads from every possible area that she finds herself and makes sure to take ownership of her decisions and of her process. This individual has been a part of numerous projects at the AI Hub, continues to, in my opinion, actually lead some of the work that we're currently doing with Chevrolet Mary Nurse Whitby. And more importantly than that, she's partaking in industry, but she's also parlaying her expertise to other students. She's someone that reminded me that once or twice, you know what, people laugh at me because I can be a little different. She reminds me to always laugh at them because they're all the same and you should celebrate your uniqueness. Melissa, always great to have you on board. This is my first ever panel experience with you. Tell the audience a little bit about when did you join Durham College? What are you currently doing with us? And how are you also involved with industry? Melissa?
Yep. Thank you for having me today. My name is Melissa Yee, as Ali said. I joined DC in the data analytics program in 2018, and then I continued on to take the AI program in 2019 and graduated last year. I joined the hub in second semester of my data analytics program, working on a recommendation system for a real estate platform. And since then, working at the hub, I have been the go-to recommendation engine person. Currently, I work as a software developer for a startup called Crave Retail. They build fitting room solutions for various retailers across the world, actually. So that's currently what I'm doing. And I've worked, I guess, as a research assistant, and now I'm currently a research associate. And I've been at the hub for about 2 years now, 2.5 years.
I think it's 2.5 years. And one of the things that I can tell you about Melissa, we've learned a thing or two from her, is around project management. Meticulous, very good with making sure that her records, her audit trail is very, very clean. Everybody at the AI Hub knows that if there is any Satan in the world of keeping good records, that Satan is me because I'm terrible at that. Melissa has always made sure to keep our records, our paperwork on point, and all of our data well stored so that we can report to our clients on time. Melissa, always good to see you, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. And for those of you who are listening, one of the things that you would have noticed is that each of these individuals that are part of the AI, still a part of the AI Hub in some shape or fashion, came from different backgrounds. Not everybody necessarily came from a computer science background. Some had a bit of a different journey. Taylor, can you tell us a little bit about your journey towards actually beginning your work in AI? Because if I'm not mistaken, and trust me, my memory is not one to go by, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't necessarily start in the world of computer science, did you, Taylor?
No, I definitely didn't. So when I originally actually went out to when I originally went to Carleton, I went for computer science, but I ended up switching over to a economics degree for my undergraduate. I then took some time off school and did some work experience. I was a manager at a Cinnabon, and then decided to go back to school, and that's where I went back to AI Hub or to DC College, and that's where I got a chance to work at the AI Hub. So yeah, no, definitely not a traditional entry into artificial intelligence by any means, but luckily through again the great team at Durham College, the transition was a smooth one.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you will notice when it comes to working with AI is that that kind of background knowledge that you need, for example, your awareness of economics, your awareness of even working at Cinnabon, gets you to understand business processes, gets you to understand how you can actually bring in some automation and intelligence into these environments. So message number one for everybody that's listening is that AI doesn't operate in a vacuum. And if you have another interest in business, you have another interest in economics for that matter, it's always very powerful to bring that to the table. Sonakshi, you had a computer science background in India, and then you came here and you started to realize that in different ways. How much did that computer science background help you in adjusting to AI studies and data analytics studies at Durham College?
So yeah, I don't have a degree in computer science. I did my bachelor's in electronics, but I was working for an as a software developer for an IT firm, and working there for almost 3 years. I had reached a point of stagnation, and I certainly wanted to upskill. And I was looking for a switch in such a way that I could gain certain skill that would add on to my pre-existing skill, but at the same time I would learn something that I didn't previously have. So I feel that was kind of a natural transition for me to move to a field that had a quite impact and a good career path, and that was the reason that I chose to do my postgrad in data analytics and artificial intelligence. Because in my previous work I was dealing with a lot of data, and we were using very traditional methods of working with Excel in order to gain insights, and I didn't really like that, and that's the reason I thought that it would be a great part for me to explore, and that is the reason that I chose to do my postgrad here and then work on projects as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you brought up to me, I still remember this when we actually went, if you recall, you were one of the first ones who traveled with us to client sites where we did presentations on projects. And if you recall, when we met with the team at a lifelong group of companies, one of the things that you had said is that, listen, when you look at this project, it seems like all of the efforts are around complicating very simple things. Let's help them remove that complication. And this was one of the things that I will highlight for all of the students, and we'll talk to Sonakshi a little bit further on, is that you have to know how to show the value of AI. One of my colleagues, Danny Pahar, always says you should know your value proposition. And Sonakshi, over a period of time, got to cultivate that value proposition at DC, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. Melissa, let's on the same way that we were talking to Sonakshi about, you also had a bit of a background in computer science, so on and so forth. But when you got into data analytics and you got into AI very early on, you also got into projects that were using AI. Was it a little bit of a challenge learning some of these libraries, learning how to code in Python while also delivering projects for industry?
Yeah, I think that it's one thing to learn all of that stuff in the classroom. A lot of the times, we in class we get code and you kind of just do a little bit of plug and play, like, oh, you put in this file and such. But when you're working on a project that doesn't have like a nice template for you to start from, it is a little bit of a learning curve to kind of start from nothing and then take in data from the real world and then start doing something with it. Because like in a classroom setting, that data is curated for you. It's perfect. And even if it's imperfect in perfect ways. So like it's
Put that on a shirt. Well
right?
said. Got competition now with these quotes.
So like honestly, you go in thinking, yeah, like I know how to use this. I know how to use sklearn and all that stuff. But it's one thing to learn it in a classroom, and it's a completely different thing to start from nothing and then use it to build something that's completely new in the world, and not just something that is from a tutorial or from your professor.
Absolutely. And, I think there's, this aspect about working with faculty members and working for and developing for industry. Let's not shy away from the reality of it, is that industry can be pretty harsh. And at the end of the day, even though we are contracted out and hired, for lack of a better word, to do research, applied research, and build prototypes, we are held to a very, very high standard. And it's not necessarily easy. I think Sonakshi and Melissa, you can all comment to the fact that we spend nights sometimes trying to figure out certain environments. Sonakshi, you'll recall working on a particular API, which, by the way, I closed that project yesterday, all done and handed over. So good job, Sonakshi, for handing that over in such a state to me. So I made it super easy. But speaking about that challenge of managing industry, Taylor, you've been a principal investigator for a while. The Region of Durham project, Mary Nurse, Chevrolet Whitby, and then iCare, and then a couple of other projects, Durham Recruiting as well. How difficult is it to manage some of that industry expectation?
Yeah, obviously it's a challenge working with the industry partners to make sure that they understand that the students are, for large part, still learning a lot of the technologies. So managing that expectation of that they're especially although the students produce obviously great work, sometimes it takes a few weeks to get started or to approach the problem. So there's that onboarding process that certainly has to happen. But beyond that, we're really lucky that, again, the leadership within the AI Hub is great at setting up projects that are reasonable and have good expectations and are able to have deliverables that are able to be met by both the leadership team and also the student staff. So.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that we've done very well at the college is, we've said slow progress is better than no progress at all. So even if we're going a little slowly, you have to manage expectations. Now, I'll just take a little bit of a break here and just say this to our audience, is that I see that there are about 100 people that are online right now. Some of you are not necessarily familiar with the process of how we work with AI at Durham College. So I'll summarize that for you in 30 seconds. Sonakshi can start the timer. It's very simple, really. A company will come to us and have a chat with myself, Dr. Vibha Tyagi, Chris Gillis, members of our team, Isabella, and say, we want to build this with AI. Is it possible? Or in that case, even cybersecurity. Is it possible? Is it not? I'll scope it out. I'll see if it's possible or not. Then if we say we can produce something for them by way of a prototype, there are two things that could happen. They either fund it directly, or they tap into some of our funding pools. Long story short, it's a cost-effective way to do research and development in AI. But here's the thing. It's not just that our prototypes are just going to be taken and then placed on a shelf somewhere. Have a conversation with Mitchell & Whale Insurance out in Whitby. Have a conversation with Durham Recruiting. Have a conversations with Light Medical. Have a conversation with Connects Health. Have conversations with Minute School. Have conversations with the Region of Durham. Our prototypes ultimately become part of that enterprise growth. That's why you see many of these companies like ShiftLink, iCare Home Health, Sheer Brilliance, CyberX, all coming back to do projects with us and sponsoring our summits, because we've helped them with enabling AI in one way or the other. But speaking about that, it is certainly difficult, or there certainly is a bit of pressure on a student when they are working on these deliverables and they need to build a little bit of a support system. So Sonakshi, I want to bring you into the conversation, because one of the things that we noticed that you did very well was you built a good circle around you of people who knew other languages that perhaps you weren't familiar with, people who were fluent in APIs that perhaps you weren't familiar with. How is that important to you? And how did you go about building a little bit of a specialist friend circle around you? Did you meet them in your classes? Did you meet them at conferences? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very great question because when you're working on a project, you follow a very collaborative approach, and everyone is given a certain amount of task to work on. And everyone would want to finish that task within the period of time and would showcase that in a client meeting. And so that is when you discuss and get perspective on certain things, and you also get some advice from your mentors as to if you are able to solve that problem or not. If not, they always advise you on how to approach that. And if there's any other team member who's good at that, then we work together in order to learn certain skill and help out if there are errors and try to resolve it. So that's where it is important to build that network and to know certain people in the hub, so who sort of know different technologies and are good at it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think, and I give a shout out to folks like who's been a PI with us, Amit Maraj, Sam Platty, for that matter, many of our members of the School of Business, of what we call BITM, who have actually helped foster a bit of a collaborative environment. So the Slack group that we have, or the WhatsApp group that we have. One thing that I'll tell you, which I feel has contributed to our success at Durham College, is that we don't work with closed doors. At any point of time, you can go and meet Dr. Vibhatyagi. You can go and meet our dean, Debbie McKee-Demchik. Heck, you can go even knock on the door of Don Levisa. That has allowed us, I believe, to create a little bit of a collaborative culture. However, that also said, at the end of the day, you've got to meet your deliverables. Melissa, one of the things that has really stood out for you is that you've maintained yourself from a space of AI. You've not just followed what you're studying in the classroom, but you've also gone and done other courses. You've gone and participated in other conferences. You've gone and taken up or read other material online. Can you tell us a little bit of how you've tried to keep your technology knowledge current? Is it just by trying out different technologies, or have you held a special diet when it comes to taking in technology knowledge? Melissa?
That's a good question. I think it's really important to, especially with technology and especially in AI, because it's relatively new, that, to keep up with everything that's changing. It's really important to, have that kind of stream of knowledge still coming in, because, something that you could be using one day is obsolete the next day. And honestly, like you need to have some sort of, it's like a litmus test to see whether that stuff is still relevant or not. In terms of keeping up, my circle is actually relatively like a lot of tech people. So we do talk about things that we've read online. If you subscribe to like Medium or any of those, you can get some curated feeds on certain technologies that you're interested in. I know I do a lot of recommendation systems, so I try to keep up with, the different types. Like there's maybe 3 broad ones, but you can specialize in a lot of other different types and get into really niche areas. And just, keeping up with that, it just gives you, a better perspective of what you can learn and how you can apply it in projects, like your own personal projects or projects at the hub.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we've seen a lot with that is this aspect of sharing and this aspect of being part of different open source communities as well, and encouraging that. I think these forums which we've had at Durham College, like Tech Talks DC, Enable AI, going to different conferences, Toronto Machine Learning Summit, going to security conferences like Women in Cyber, CISO Forum, enabling students to share, and giving them a safe space to share is extremely important. And that's another thing that at Durham College we hold very close to us. One of the things that I'll tell you is that we have absolutely no problem if a student falls down and makes a mistake. You fall down 7 times to get up 8, and creating that safe space for sharing information is extremely important. Speaking of that, Taylor, I'll bring you back into the conversation. And I know that we've got quite a few people that are paying attention here, and I've got a few questions in my DM. One of them is focusing on the importance of having programming knowledge when it comes to going into AI. Was that particularly important? And I think the context for this is very interesting. We do have quite a few folks who have an interest in AI and are considering to apply to the AI program, but have never really coded or touched code before. How do you tackle that kind of a question and situation, Taylor?
Yeah, absolutely. So with AI, of course, there's of course coding involved. So you'll have to have at least some of that, and you'll have to be able to at least willing to be able to learn that at a basic level. But for the most part, if you have a strong set of problem-solving skills, you have a great desire to learn, and then you're also able, I'd say even maybe more key is to be able to look at data in an unbiased manner and be able to look at problems in unique ways, I think and so not having always a direct computer science background is always necessary. It's certainly beneficial if you want to learn the extreme deep math that comes with AI. That's certainly available to those who want to go that route. But there's also certainly a lot of practical applications for artificial intelligence that don't require such deep understanding of the math behind it. So there's certainly an area for everyone, I think, and that as long as you're willing to learn it and you're willing to put in the effort, I think that there's a lot of room for everyone.
Absolutely. And just looking at some of those program skills now, Sonakshi, with your background as well, you didn't necessarily have a lot of exposure to Python, but you were familiar with front-end development as well as back-end development in the past. What were those core languages or the front-end and back-end skills that really helped you? If you had to pick a couple of skills that people should bring when they're studying AI, what would those be? Can you reflect on your own experience?
Definitely. I mean, just to echo on what Taylor said, having some sort of an edge is always important if you are entering into this field. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you are not from a programming background, you will not be able to excel. So, see, if you are from a programming background, it can be of a great value because by the end you're trying to integrate your solution within the client infrastructure, right? So, and if you have some knowledge of what a software development cycle looks like, so that will give you an inherent advantage into understanding what the product is, and because that is what you'll be working with while you are working on these projects. So for me, I excelled in this because I was mostly handling the part where I was productionizing the model and building an interface where I was integrating these machine learning models. So what some of the technologies, and I would say some of the tools that really worked, was one was Python, one was knowing what a database is, one was knowing how to wrap around your machine learning model within an API so that it can be used at the front interface of the client infrastructure. So you have to really decide where your specialty lies and pick on that and get deeper into it at Excel, because AI is a very multidisciplinary field, and it's not just about coding. There's a lot of domain knowledge also important when you're entering this field and where you're applying these skills. So yeah, that's where I think that. And apart from even programming language, I think that you also need to know a lot of knowledge about tools, right? And you'll only be able to understand different tools if your core concepts are correct. So I will say that the actual skills are getting your concepts correct and brushing up that. Yeah.
Absolutely, and well said, Sonakshi. So I'm voting Sonakshi Prime Minister next time. I clearly remember my first panel with Sonakshi, and she brought me her answers well in advance and showed me everything. Said, "This is what I'm going to say," and asked me to edit them. And this time around, she's like, "Yeah, I'll join your panel, and I'll school you a little bit on AI." And I'm glad to be a student of listening to her because that was extremely, extremely well put in, Sonakshi. It is true. I can tell you right now, we have a lot of folks from Durham College. Viva, for one, is watching you. Isabella is watching you. And all of them are truly, truly fascinated with how far you've come. So thank you, Sonakshi, for sharing that. Melissa, likewise, you've got a bit of a fan club as well going on here because you're still working with us, and we want you to continue working with us and contributing. If I can take a little bit of what Sonakshi said, and also focus a little bit on the aspect of requirements gathering. So one of the things that you've been doing very well, especially in that project where you're working with Mary Nurse Chevrolet Whitby, but also the Smart EMR project, you've gone through this process of gathering client requirements. And you've gone through to say, okay, what does the client want and how can we get there? Can you tell us a little bit about why that's been very important to you and why that's almost like a specialist skill set, Melissa?
That's a really good question.
Once in a while I ask them,
I gotta give it to you. That's a really good question. I think it's super important because clients and like just anybody, when you come up with this idea, you get really excited and you're like, this is what my project's going to be. This is all the things I'm going to do. And you kind of don't really have specific ideas of exactly how to get there or what exactly that's going to mean, or even if it's even practical. So gathering requirements and talking it out with the client actually puts it into perspective of like, not only is this what you want, does it even make sense that this is what you want? Is it even possible? I think that those are a lot of questions that need to come up and drive, the success of the project, because yeah, you can tell the client, like, you can gather requirements and do, say, yeah, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, we can do everything.
Sounds like me.
Right? Yeah, we can do everything. My students will figure it out, right? You can say all that, and then at the end of the day, you realize, or if you're doing it halfway through, you realize, oh, this is not possible. Like, by the laws of physics, this is just not possible, or whatever, right? And then, the morale, the project goes down because you realize you've made, a commitment that you can't keep. So, gathering requirements is huge to the success of the project, because it draws kind of the boundaries of, yeah, we want to give you a product or a project that, you're going to enjoy, it's going to thrive, and, it's going to add value to your business or whatever you use it for. But at the same time, it has to be realistic, and, it has to actually add value, because sometimes a client might be like, I have this really strange idea that I want to add on. And you think about it, you talk about it with them for a bit, and then they might realize, you know what, that actually doesn't make any sense. It's going to give us a lot of work. That's not going to give us anything in the end. So that's kind of the line that you have to walk when you're doing client requirements and gathering those, because obviously you want to do what they ask, or else why are they even coming to you? But then at the same time, you got to keep expectations realistic. You have to keep the end goal of the project in mind, and whether or not it will add value to the business as a whole.
Absolutely. And Melissa, again, I'll say this, speaking as someone who's seen you progress at Durham College, the level of maturity that's coming out in the way you've assessed and explained how AI can be useful for a business is truly, truly profound. And it's heartwarming to see that. And I think, and again, this is a very big speculation, that course you did with me on consulting and communications is finally bearing some fruit, maybe. And then you see Sonakshi smiling like she's modeling for toothpaste. Like, yeah, that course, I attended it like 2 days out of the 14 weeks, then I passed.
I don't need that course.
Whatever. But also when you were talking about like, oh yeah, Ali said that you can build me a machine that will cook food for me and do this, and my students will figure out. I could see Taylor going, yeah, that sounds like Ali. He's promised them the world, and then we give them a tiny little bit of something. But speaking of that, we've got another 7 to 8 more minutes left. I really appreciate your time on this evening. Taylor, we'll come back to you. And Taylor, one of the things that you've had to do as a PI is there've been situations where students have just not come through, and you've had to either coach them through or you've had to find more resources. How has that been like for you? And many times, and I'm a witness to it, you've sometimes taken on the burden yourself and done the dev work. How do you manage some of these teams, and what are the challenges there?
Yeah, so obviously, again, working with students, especially with as people are working with the technology for the first time, it's sometimes hard to gauge someone's capabilities and what they are able to accomplish. So of course, that's a challenge. It's mostly, we've gotten better over the years, certainly of assessing who is a good candidate to be able to perform and stuff. So that's been helpful. Just the experience of as we go has been huge, but also understanding that, again, the job needs to get done at the end of the day. The client has paid for a product, and as a PI, it comes to you as the responsibility for the requirements and for the outcome. So sometimes you just kind of have to roll up your sleeves and get to work. But luckily, again, our students have been great, and it hasn't happened very often. So we've been very fortunate in that manner. So.
Yeah, and I sound like a bit of a broken record when I say this, but I've always mentioned is that if you're failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. So for those that are listening, especially you've got some businesses that are listening, considering doing a project with us, we have some funding, come and talk to us. But all of that said, one of the things that you'll see that we do is when we choose a project, we go through a bit of a budgeting cycle. in that budgeting cycle, my dear friends who have made me look like an administrative genius, Viva and Isabella, and formerly Ruchi used to do that. I believe Ruchi is on. So Ruchi, shout out to you, my friend. I miss you dearly. Again, thank you for making me look really, really good from a budget standpoint. But hey, Viva and Isabella, I've got that now, and they're making me look extra good on that front. But one of the things that we do is we put a buffer. And you'll always notice that on a weekly basis, we'll have a conversation with Viva and Isabella and let them know where we're at. Because if they see that there's an opportunity where something could go not as planned, you need to budget for that. And that's one of the most rewarding experiences at the AI Hub. We won't shy away from those difficult conversations. Have we failed a couple of times? Absolutely. But then we take responsibility for that and we attempt to fix it. And I think that's created a bit of a safe space for innovation and allowed us to take risks without being risky. Now, I'm going to ask one more question to all of you, and then we're going to wrap up. Sonakshi, if you had one piece of advice for students coming into Durham College interested in the AI program, besides telling them that go and stay far, far away from Ali, what would you tell them in terms of coming to Durham College?
For someone who is entering this program, I would say that do some groundwork in terms of understanding the basic concepts that are required and also some technical skills. Because if you do that, you will be able to get started pretty well into this course, and also start long before even starting in this program. Start working on different data sets, because that will give you a sort of a knowledge of what this program is all about, and you will be able to be ahead of the game. So, and there are different platforms like Kaggle and GitHub, which have different repositories that you can work on. So just pick any data set, and that can be in a domain that you like, and sort of, apply your techniques and try working on that. That is one piece of advice that I would want to give. And apart from that, from someone who is not from a programming background, that shouldn't be stopping you to enter in this field, because I have personally worked with people who have zero programming knowledge, and they have excelled pretty well in picking up Python and working with that. So that shouldn't stop you from entering this field for sure.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that has happened a great deal at the AI Hub is different companies that we've worked with, and you'll see many of them speaking tomorrow, is while they have also started tabula rasa, very blank when it comes to AI, they've eventually picked up certain skills. And often, very, very often, they might just leave the programming piece to Sonakshi, but you'll find a lot of these companies starting to unpack and rethink the data in different ways. And that's where a lot of insights are drawn from. I've always said this, that eyesight is blind. If eyesight is useless, if insight is blind, you need that insight to uncover those secret sauces in the data set. So Sonakshi, as always, well said. Melissa, we'll come to you, and not necessarily, I'm not going to ask you a question on what advice would you give for students, but what's one advice you'd give to an industry partner looking to collaborate with Durham College and the AI Hub? Here we go.
I think that one piece of advice would be to stay open-minded. I think that a lot of there's like AI and machine learning, it's so sexy, right? I think that a lot
Fair enough.
I think that a lot, it's like a buzzword, right? I think that a lot of people think, or like businesses think that they need it because everybody else is doing it. And like to a degree, yes, right? You need to keep up with your competition, but at the same time, I think that you might end up, having one idea and sticking to that and saying, I need you to build this and only this. And, coming to the hub, the student team and the PIs might, reframe actually what your project or what your end goal is going to be. And that will actually probably, give you better value, even though it's not exactly what you imagined. They might look at your data and say, look, I know you want to build a chatbot, but maybe you should think about building something else, right? Like a chatbot in this context maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe you need a recommendation system. Maybe you need something else, right? I think that because it's really a buzzword, right? AI and all that you can kind of get caught up in saying, yep, I need predictive analytics and blah, 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 which, yeah, you might, but you might not. And I think, coming to the hub saying, yeah, I have an idea, but being open-minded about that idea might change, and it actually might be for the better. I think that is one piece of advice I would give the industry partners, is just keep an open mind about what we might be able to do for you.
Well, one thing that I can say, if there are any companies out there looking for people for their board, I think Melissa is perfectly suited for that, because again, she embodies that thing of you can take a few risks without being risky. Absolutely well said, Melissa. And I think a lot of this has to also draw from the fact that not only are you now taking a leadership role in some projects of the hub, you're also working with industry, and you're beginning to see both sides of the coin. And you're beginning to also realize that companies do maintain a small budget, if they will, for such R&D activities. And if you can do it with an open mind, forget the fact that, oh, we might fall. Honey, there's a chance you might fly, and you need to appreciate that. So Melissa, thank you so much for that. Now, in keeping true with Ali, I will say this to the audience, and I know my panelists know this. I actually did give them 6 questions before this session, and I didn't ask any of them because I didn't want this to be scripted. I wanted to have fun, and I think we had a lot of fun. Taylor, I'm going to start with you. This is the last question. I'm going to go around with everybody, and then we're going to come to a close. You have a lot of people that are watching right now. Close to it. It's gone down a bit. So we're about 90 odd people that are watching. If there's one person that you wanted to give a shout out to, who would that person be?
I'll say Amit Miraj, professor at large, Durham College, and been my mentor for the last few years. So, and unfortunately a Leafs fan. And as a Habs fan, I'm very happy.
Well, Taylor, my AI tool over here that's analyzing your response has said that was a very dangerous response, because your partner is watching, and you should have been giving a shout out to your partner.
I thought you were going to say your wife.
I should have.
You live with her. You're going to have to go and talk to her after and explain this.
I know.
Very, very risky approach. When we've been talking about lowering risk, he takes a risky approach. If all of you hear that Taylor is sleeping in the garage or sleeping anywhere near the house, if he's lucky, you know exactly why. But Taylor, absolutely. Amit was responsible for establishing much of what we did alongside Dean Debbie, back then Mike Sparling, Chris Gillis, Vibha, Isabella, Ruchi. They set up the foundations for our success. And absolutely, shout out to you, Amit, as I used to call him, boss man. Good to see the strides that you're making in industry, and I truly, truly miss you. I know I promised to call him back 5 weeks ago, and now I'm terribly scared to give him a call, because the kind of flowery language he will place on me will be very, very traumatizing. So I will escape from that. And Sonakshi agrees, because I'm very, very bad at returning calls. I'm good at acknowledging your presence. I'm very bad at actually engaging. But Sonakshi, if there's anybody that you could give a shout out to this evening, who would that be?
I would give that to Mauricio.
Mauricio! And why? Why Mauricio?
Because he was one of the first person who joined at the hub, and when I see him, I see myself. He's very hardworking. He's very dedicated, and he's just the best.
Absolutely. And Mauricio, absolutely. You know what? With Mauricio, similar story to yourself. Came to Canada about 2 years ago with his kids, and they're taller than him now. We joked to him about it, but he's also now part-time with us and manages our knowledge translation activities. And here's the beautiful thing. Mauricio knows how to spell AI, but doesn't know anything else beyond that. But he is the engine of everything that we do in AI and at the AI Hub. So Mauricio, I know you're listening. I know you're busy on social media, but the love's coming your way. And I echo that, Mauricio. You've been fundamental. The beautiful stream that you're seeing today, thanks to the CyberX and the Cyber Exchange team, Jordan and Mauricio have been phenomenal. So yes, Sonakshi, thank you for that brilliant shout out. And last but not the least, Lady Yi, who will your shout out go to?
Yeah, I don't know if I have as many fans as Taylor. Taylor apparently has a whole fan base that has come. But since you mentioned her, I will give my shout out to Miss Ruchi. I miss her terribly. It was always nice to see her around the hub, and because she wasn't on the projects or anything, just talk about whatever, it kind of just made it feel more of a home there, right? I had someone to talk to about stuff that wasn't project related. And I was really sad to hear her leave us, but I'm glad that she's watching, and that's who my shout out goes to.
Absolutely. And you know what? Ruchi was actually one of the people who was on the interview panel when I accepted the job at Durham College. I have no idea what I was doing in that interview, but somehow I clearly made sense to them. But I'll tell you this much is that was probably a very defining moment of my life, and Ruchi had a huge role to play in that. I think one of the things that, when you mentioned Ruchi, at the AI Hub, a lot of us have become truly family, and we've had lunches together, dinners together. COVID has obviously put a big damper on that. But one of the things that we formed is lifelong friendships, and that's what it's all about when you build community around what you do. I've always said this, it's about people, process, and technology. You can know all the technology in the world, you can know all the process in the world, but you need to have the right people at the table. And Taylor, Sonakshi, Melissa, I couldn't think of any better people at the table than you. Melissa, I think the world of you. I keep encouraging you to stay on working on projects, and I'm glad that you've accepted. And as we keep bringing in projects, we'd obviously like to keep you and keep having your wisdom shared. Sonakshi, of course, you did get an offer that you couldn't refuse, and that's the whole point. But I really appreciate the fact that you still stay connected and you still remain involved in some shape or fashion. And of course, Taylor, with working with one of our clients, Eye Care Home Health, Health Espresso, but also championing a lot of projects at the Hub. You're truly giving back in many ways and inspiring a lot of future AI enthusiasts and AI developers. With that, before I thank you, I'm going to ask the three of you just to stay on until we get the instructions that we're off. But to our audience, I will just remind you, tomorrow we kickstart at 8:45 a.m.-ish. But I think the keynote begins at 9, but at approximately 8:55, we'll have opening comments from my mentor at Durham College, Dr. Vibha Tyagi. She'll be telling you a little bit about what she does and introducing our keynote speaker from General Motors. After that, we have a couple of panels, one on predicting user behavior. Those things like recommendation systems, perhaps, and knowing where users are going to go next. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. We'll then be looking at learning systems and expert systems to improve learning outcomes. We have Sam Platti, who's going to be speaking on that, along with some folks from BMO. We'll then have a healthcare session led by Medha Soraya, Sabah Siddiqui, and Rick Manessa, a member of our board, our advisory committee. They'll be talking about some of the implications of natural language processing in healthcare. And last but not the least, we'll also have a session on computer visioning technologies, and then a closing keynote from somebody that I hold in a great deal of respect, Mr. Tushar Singh from Minute School and Starship Dreams. He's going to be talking about a subject that is very, very interesting, blockchain. And he's going to be talking about using machine learning to hack smart contracts. So an exciting day of learning, an exciting day of engagement awaits us. There's one thing that I've learned from this panel is it doesn't matter if you're going left, right, north, south, east, west. The whole concept is to keep on moving. And that's exactly what our friends here on this panel have done. They've kept on moving and never forgotten where they started from. With that, thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're at. This is Ali signing off. Have a good evening.